Welcome to another episode of Izzy Video. My name is Israel Hyman. As you can see, I'm outdoors in the noonday sun. This is the harshest the sun is going to be today, and I would benefit from using some levels of diffusion in this kind of lighting condition. I've had several of you ask me about diffusion panels and about the different levels of diffusion that you can use and what the impact is. So what I thought I'd do for this episode is show you some different levels of diffusion. I have three of them here. This is a 1/4 stop diffusion. This is 3/4, and then I also have a whole 1 1/4 stop diffusion there. So I'm going to show you all three of these and the impact that they have on my face in close-up and talk a little bit about them so you can see what the effect is of using them. The first thing I need to show you is what I look like as before. So this is without any diffusion at all, just under the noonday sun, very harsh. You'll notice that it's very intense, that there's a big contrast between the lit areas of my face and the shadow areas of my face. You'll also notice that I have deep raccoon eyes. This is not very flattering for me. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put some diffusion up, and that's going to change a couple different things. It's going to change the intensity of the light, so there'll be less of a difference between the shadows and the lit areas, the bright areas, but also it's going to change the quality of the light, so you'll notice changes in the edges of the shadows. Let's go ahead and put the 1/4 stop up and see what that looks like. This is my 1/4 stop diffusion panel, and just in case you haven't seen my earlier episodes, this is what's called a Scrims system. It's from Westcott, and I'm a big fan. I use this stuff all the time. Okay, so I'm just going to attach this to my C-stand here. This is a C-stand with a arm and a grip head on it, and you'll notice I also have sandbags down here, and the reason why I have the sandbags is because when you get this thing up in the air, it acts like a sail, and it can actually create a hazard. Slight wind blows and it can knock the whole thing over, so you use sandbags as many as you need to keep the thing steady and firm. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is adjust my arm here and loosen this up a little bit here and extend it out. Okay, like this. Tighten that down. And then I'll do the same thing over here. I'm going to loosen this up, and this is where I'll attach my diffusion panel. Like this. Okay, and tighten that up a little bit. And then what I like to do is I like to refer to the shadow on the ground as I adjust the angle of this, because I need to adjust the angle according to where the sun is to create the most surface area that this is covering. So I like to reference that shadow there as I make those decisions. That looks pretty good. I like the angle that's there. So I'll go ahead and raise this up like this. And I'll go even a little further than that. Raise it up a little bit more. That seems to be about good right there. Okay, so now what I can do is, as the subject, I can get into position, and then we'll be able to see the effect.
When you're looking at the lighting, I think it's a good idea to look at a couple different things here. Let's start with the highlights. The highlights definitely are still very bright. Here on my forehead and on my cheeks and nose, you can see that the specular highlights are still very intense. The 1/4 stop diffusion doesn't really do a lot. It just takes the edge off a little bit. Same thing with the shadows here around my eyes. There's still an abrupt transition area from the area that's in shadow to the area that's not in shadow. You can see it's still a pretty harsh transition area, a very fine line there. However, it's not quite as intense and as abrupt as it was when I was under no diffusion at all, when I was just standing under the bare sun. So what can I say about a 1/4 stop diffusion? It takes the edge off a little bit, but it still gives that very harsh look to it. So I would only use this if you want to make subtle adjustments. With the 3/4 stop diffusion panel above my head, one of the first things I notice is that the specular highlight on my forehead is much bigger. It's a much bigger, bright area on my forehead, and that's because I've got more diffusion above me. In addition, I also see that the background is brighter, and the reason for that is because we had to open up the aperture on the camera a little bit more, because with more diffusion above my head, I'm now standing in more of a shadow, so I had to open up that aperture a little bit more in order to get a similar type of exposure to the previous image, which in effect creates a brighter background now because I had to open up the aperture. So the way to solve that, incidentally, is just to put a black net behind your subject, and you'll see in the next clip it's a much more significant difference as well. Not much of a difference here in the eyes. The shadow does appear to be still pretty sharp as you move from the eye area to the cheek area. The shadow does have a harsh edge to it, but it's not as harsh as it was in the previous image. With a 1 1/4 stop diffusion panel above my head, there are three main big differences that I see. And the first one is the background is almost completely blown out. And that is because, once again, we had to open up that aperture because I added more heavy diffusion. So we had to open up the aperture in order to get a similar type of exposure on my skin tone. Also, you'll notice that the specular highlight area on my forehead is larger and it's more of a gradual transition from the normal skin tone to the bright highlighted area of my skin tones. So it's more of a gradual transition there, not only in the highlight, but number 3 is in the shadows. Look around my eye and you can see that there's a softer, more gradual transition from the shadow area to the normal skin tone area. Once again, indicating that we're using heavy diffusion. So in this case, a 1 1/4 stop diffusion panel makes a big difference in my overall look. This is with the sun only and no diffusion. This is with 1/4 stop of diffusion. This is with 3/4 stops of diffusion. And this is 1 1/4 stops of diffusion. Big differences between the images.
Indoors, lights are the main instrument that we use for lighting. Outdoors, we use diffusion panels, reflectors, and nets. Hopefully you found this information helpful, and I'll see you next time on Izzy Video.